Let's now shift gears to G7 updates. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be travelling to Italy on Thursday to attend the Group of Seven Summit or G7 Summit. In his first overseas visit after assuming office for the third consecutive time, Prime Minister Modi would join global leaders in attending the G7 Summit, which is being held in Italy's Borgo Egnazia from June 13 to 15th. DD India's senior correspondent Amritpal Singh reports from Apulia in Italy.
Days after assuming office, Prime Minister Modi will make a day-long visit to Italy to participate in the G7 summit on June 14th. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni had extended an invitation to Prime Minister Modi to attend the G7 summit under her presidency of the global bloc.
The visit assumes a significance as this will be Honourable Prime Minister's first overseas travel after assuming office in his third consecutive term. It will also afford him an opportunity to engage with other world leaders present at the G7 summit on issues of importance to India as also to the global south. Prime Minister will participate in the outreach session along with the other countries invited for the outreach summit.
As world leaders gather here in the picturesque settings by the Adriatic Sea, Prime Minister Modi will be holding bilateral meetings with G7 leaders, including with US President Joe Biden and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, as also with his Italian counterpart Giorgia Meloni. The Prime Minister on Friday will address an outreach session where he'll address issues related to food security, health and development. Prime Minister Modi will also hold bilateral meetings with his counterparts from other G7 partner countries. The Prime Minister is expected to address issues of the global south, development and climate change.
Meeting between the two Prime Ministers will be a great opportunity to see what has been done in the bilateral ties in the last 2-3 years, but also to give it a more strategic dimension. Participating countries, both the G7 and the partners, will have an opportunity to discuss the important economic issues that are on the global table, and also they will discuss some of the key regional and global issues on the agenda.
The G7 summit is a grouping of the world's 7 most developed economies that include Canada, France, Germany, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States of America as its member nations. As the Italy summit is largely focused on the ongoing conflicts in West Asia and Ukraine, the G7 is likely to adopt its plan of funding the Ukrainian war chest through frozen Russian assets. India, on its part, would like to stay away from any such move that directly incriminates Russia, thus reiterating its long-standing position that the way forward is through dialogue and diplomacy and not through war. With cameraman Shailendra Chauhan, this is Amritpal Singh in Borgo Egnazia, Italy.
And we have with us Amritpal Singh joining us live from Italy there. Amrit, good evening to you. Now, of course, this is Prime Minister's first overseas visit after assuming office for the third consecutive time. Give us an overview of what India really brings to the table and the significance of it.
What India brings, Sakal, to the table is the voice of the global south. G7, as you know, is a grouping of the 7 most developed industrial economies of the world. But they increasingly realize that they cannot work in silos. They have to engage with that part of the world where most of the population lives. And developing world, or what is commonly referred to as the global south, accounts for 2/3 of the world's population. So unless their issues, their concerns, their aspirations are factored into the global governance architecture, you really wouldn't be able to solve the challenges being faced by the world. And that is why you see the G7 are trying to engage through outreach sessions and inviting countries from Asia and Africa What India over the past few years has been able to do is assume the undeclared leadership of the global south, effectively put its political heft, its political weight behind the aspirations and concerns of the voice of the global south, the countries which really do not matter that much in terms of their political weight in the global governance architecture, which India does because of its rising stature. So that is what India brings to the table. It's a voice of reason to the world, even as it goes through the conflicts both in West Asia and Ukraine-Russia.
You spoke about Ukraine-Russia in your report as well. So the overall agenda in this particular edition of G7, considering what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, and the positions that the G7 respective countries have taken on this. So a bit on that as well, the overall agenda G7.
The overall agenda includes various tracks. There are two sessions of the G7. Then there are 5 outreach sessions of the outreach countries, of which India is one, the partner countries of G7, where the G7 sits and engages with them under various headings. Indo-Pacific is one, climate change is one, migration and mobility is one. So there are 5 outreach sessions. Different leaders participate. Prime Minister Modi is also participating in one of the outreach sessions, or making an intervention in one of the outreach sessions. Apart from that, the G7 has its the grouping of 7 countries has its own 2 sessions. They discuss everything under the sun. It started out as an organization whose agenda was primarily economic issues, but they increasingly now encompass almost everything from counter-terrorism to development to food security to health, etc., climate change, including climate change. But what happens, Sakal, at any session, any particular thing that dominates the world at that particular time tends to overshadow the other sessions. So with President Zelensky coming here, participating in this meeting where Italy is invited, so obviously all eyes would be on how the G7 looks at Zelensky, whether it is able to adopt its plan of using frozen Russian assets, because there are quarters where there is resistance to that, and this comes on the close on the heels of the peace summit in Switzerland on Ukraine. So what would the G7 be doing? So that the world is closely watching, and I think that will overshadow the agenda, the broad agenda which I've spoken about at the G7 here at Borgo Egnazia in Italy.
All right. Thank you very much, Amrit, for joining us live from Italy and giving us an insight into the G7 and overall deliverables. Thank you.